Have you ever wondered what a world-class university will actually look like in, say, 2050? It's a huge question, and a recent landmark seminar with some top scholars tackled it head-on. And let me tell you, their answers paint a picture of a future that is, well, both incredibly transformative and really challenging. So let's dive in and break it down.
So, this is the question, right? This is what drove the entire conversation. And the answers? They're not simple predictions, not at all. They're a super complex and fascinating look at the major forces that are already shaping the future of higher education, and honestly, some of them are pretty unsettling. To really get to the heart of this, we're going to explore 5 key forces that are all converging on universities. First, this idea of a general storm of uncertainty. Then, a new kind of geopolitical Cold War. Of course, the promise and the peril of AI. Some massive shifts in our climate and population. And finally, the one thing that might, just might, hold it all together: trust. Okay, so first up, let's talk about this storm on the horizon. The number one takeaway from the seminar wasn't some single predictable trend. Nope. Instead, it was this overwhelming feeling of profound uncertainty as all these different global crises start to overlap and interact in ways we just can't predict.
The experts were crystal clear on this. We are heading into a time where these huge global forces are crashing together to completely reorder academic life as we know it. The old rulebook is basically being thrown out the window, and the future is anything but certain.
And we're not talking about minor tremors here. The seminar identified 4 massive tectonic plates shifting all at once: fierce geopolitical confrontation, massive technological disruption from AI, immense demographic pressures, and of course, climate change. Let's start with that first one.
And that brings us right to the new geopolitical landscape. This was flagged as the most immediate, most intense pressure that universities are facing today. It's this collision course between national security concerns and the very idea of open, global academic collaboration.
This question really gets to the heart of the conflict. I mean, what happens when national borders start to become intellectual borders? When the free flow of ideas, of researchers, is suddenly viewed as a potential security risk?
Now, you might be thinking this is just a repeat of the 20th century, but it's not. The first Cold War was a pretty simple binary standoff, the US versus the USSR. Today's world is so much more complex. It's fragmented with these overlapping, unpredictable blocks and this large non-aligned zone that actually has a lot of its own power.
This quote from a British participant just nails it. It really became a central theme. The rules are different, the players are different, and that old playbook, it just won't work anymore.
So how does this actually hit universities? Well, we're already seeing scientific research being looked at through a national security lens. The US and Canada are building entire research security bureaucracies. Europe is tightening its policies too. The bottom line is pretty stark. The free movement of talented people and their ideas is facing new and really serious restrictions.
All right, the second major force, you knew it was coming: AI. It's the ultimate double-edged sword. On one side, it holds this unbelievable promise. But on the other, it creates some massive dangers and a potential power vacuum that universities have to figure out how to navigate.
I mean, on the one hand, AI could totally supercharge scientific discovery, help us solve humanity's biggest problems. But on the other hand, it could just widen the gap between the rich and poor institutions. And, maybe even worse, it could lead to universities handing over their authority to the giant corporations that control the tech. That creates a huge ethical vacuum, where corporate profits, not academic integrity, drive the research.
And this isn't just theory. The seminar pointed to specific examples, like the massive, state-backed Stargate AI initiative in the US. The danger here is that these huge corporate government partnerships could centralize all the cutting-edge discovery and basically move it outside of the university system entirely.
Which, leads to this really critical question for the next few decades. Are universities going to be left in the dust in this AI arms race? Are they going to become followers instead of the leaders in scientific progress?
This quote from a participant really gets to the heart of the issue. Everybody is talking about AI's potential, but almost no one is leading the conversation about how to use it responsibly, ethically. And that's a role universities are perfectly positioned to fill. But if they don't step up, you can bet someone else, like corporations or national security agencies, will.
Okay, now let's zoom out a bit and look at the slower-moving, but maybe even more profound forces that are reshaping our world: climate change and population shifts. These are the long-term trends that are going to fundamentally change the global landscape for decades.
The experts talked about this cascade of crises, rising sea levels, more extreme weather, food insecurity, and massive population displacement. And these are not just environmental issues. They're going to create completely new educational needs and radically disrupt how students and researchers can even move around the world.
At the exact same time, we're seeing this stark demographic reality play out. You have key regions like East Asia and Europe facing rapidly shrinking youth populations. For universities, that means the traditional pool of students from their own countries, it's just drying up.
So the logical answer has been to rely more and more on international students. But here's the catch. Here's where it all gets tangled up. The very same geopolitical tensions and rising xenophobia we just talked about are now undermining that model. It's like a perfect storm, where the solution to one problem is being threatened by another.
So that brings us to the final and maybe most important part of the discussion, trust. In a world that's so turbulent, what can possibly provide stability? The seminar's answer was both surprisingly simple and incredibly difficult to achieve.
You've got these two competing visions. On one hand, there's this really hopeful idea for the future. Universities with diverse missions, grounded in the needs of their local communities, developing totally new ways of operating. But the dominant trend, it's pushing in the exact opposite direction, towards a system driven by financialization, where everything is measured by performance metrics and universities are basically assessed like publicly traded companies.
And this powerful quote from a senior scholar just cuts through all the noise. Rankings will not save us. Competition will not save us. What will matter is trust. This is the proposed antidote to all those forces of fragmentation and corporatization.
But, trust can sound a little vague. What does it actually mean in this context? Well, they see it as a concrete foundation built on 3 pillars. Trust among different institutions, trust among individual scholars across borders, and finally, trust across entire societies.
And so that leaves us with this final, really vital question. In a world that seems increasingly turbulent and divided, can our universities leverage that kind of trust to become our most important, our most trusted builders of global cooperation? The answer to that is going to define not just their future, but maybe all of ours as well.